Oh, that's pretty bloody good, isn't it? Do we seriously just win? Yes! Let's go! Katarina! The rally effect being so strong. Ah, that feels good. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra video. Today we're going to be talking about what I like to refer to as an archetype review, just meaning talking about the general strategy and how some cards work together, and then talk about kind of the future for, honestly, Katarina and how this card has kind of been shaking up and where I think it really needs to be well positioned going into the patch next week. Again, recording this on Saturday, so there's a patch coming out in the next few days and how things might change. But first, let's kind of talk about how we got here, really. What is this tech and what does it want to be doing? And then talking about what I like and don't like going forward. So first and foremost, yes, this is a Yasuo deck. Primarily, this is going to be nothing new if you've been playing. This is a set one card if you've been playing for a while. But just generally for those that don't know, because again, this is more kind of a review up front, Yasuo is really a kind of build the entire deck around him champion with potentially going to have a large payoff, right? So to level them up, you have to either stun or recall units. Now, again, that part is going to be some of your own, so you do have ways to bounce cards back to your hand, or when you either stun or recall one of your opponent's units, you're going to deal 2 damage to it. Well, this got buffed, you know, at least for the stats that it has in Ionia. A 4-drop 4/4 quick attack is actually pretty good, and I really like it a lot. And even more so when it becomes a 4-drop 5/5 quick attack, right? That pairs up against a lot of things very well in the meta. Now, if you're going against a Hearthguard deck which is a Freljord card, it's going to feel really bad. But generally speaking, 5 is a very nice threshold where it's going to be able to do things like, you know, obviously kill a Braum on its natural attack. It's going to kill Anivia. Nothing in the Karma Ezreal deck can really block this favorably, right? So it's going to exhaust a lot of your opponent's cards just to try to slow this down, right? And then obviously this big payoff, the big grand thing that you get out of it is that whenever you stun or recall an enemy unit, it's going to deal his attack power to it. So again, this then turns cards like Will of Ionia, which we're going to cover as well. It just turns into a 4-cost removal most of the time, not all the time, but generally speaking, most of the time it's going to be removal. And then, of course, as we saw kind of later in the meta, Mina, which is the 9-drop, which I guess I should pull up really quick just in case people don't know. Back in the old list, this just turned Mina into a triple removal card, which is really nice. So obviously, you should be bouncing 3 things, and against a more mid-range or heavy control decks where you're light on units, generally you would play Mina, and it would just open up the board for you. They get 1 response option, and then generally you're just winning because you have enough of a wide board, right, to swing through damage. And obviously, it is a 9-drop, so it's very difficult to play for max value, but that's kind of where the archetype was previously. And then let's talk about some other cards that really kind of shine together with this, right? So Intimidating Roar, and I'll say up front, I think this is a card that is going to, assuming the meta stays where it's at, I think this is a card that is actually underrated for how it stacks up in the meta, right? So if you think about the Braum Anivia deck, and you also think about Karma Ezreal, this stuns everything. This literally just locks their entire board. So if we think about how those matchups generally go, right, they're going to go wide, they're going to have multiple Anivias, and you really don't want those Anivias to block anyways because they just turn into an egg, they get another block. It's awkward, right? They just infinitely block you and it feels terrible. However, Intimidating Roar then says, okay, your entire board is locked. You have to rely on, you know, Mystic Shots and Wills and stuff like that, or I'm just going to keep attacking. And we're going to come back to this once I talk about Katarina, but just a generally strong card, right? So we've talked about Yasuo and wanting to stun and recall stuff. What are like the other 3 trio of cards, right? Again, talking about this from more archetype review in terms of what do they give Yasuo in set 1 and what does that really mean going forward. We have cards like Legion General. So this is just a general payoff card where whenever it's summoned, you get +1/+1 for each unit you've stunned or recalled this game. Again, this one's a more general, so if you get value for bouncing your own stuff. And generally speaking, this is going to become like a 7/7 or 8/8 fairly easily. And for a 5-drop, that's pretty good stats, right? And keeping in mind that this is more of a global thing, so as the game goes on, right, if you save this until, you know, turn 8, turn 9, what have you, it's just going to keep getting buffs naturally as the game goes on. Now, again, with Intimidating Roar, as I just mentioned, you then have this potential where you use Intimidating Roar in a turn, right? And then this obviously has to be 9 or 10. Maybe you stun 5 or 6 things, you drop Legion General, it very quickly is, you know, like a 12-12 in that scenario, and then you just swing through for games. So I think I like this card just from a overall, if you're still going to be playing this archetype, because it's just, the fearsome is very strong as it were, and the payoff potential you get out of this is insane, where Yasuo, you know, you have to invest so many cards into it, then you also have to have him on board to get his effect. This is one that just kind of plays nicely, right, as it were, as you're going throughout the game. Talking about other ways to get free stuns, right, is Minotaur Reckoner. Now, this one is really awkward in the current meta, just as a 6-cost 6/6. The stats are, like, okay, but stunning the weakest enemy is usually hit or miss, right? If we think about Braum, or if we think about, like, Eye of the Dragon, there's a lot of misses in the current meta in terms of it doesn't feel good to stun. However, if you're in a mid-range matchup where if you're going against, like, Ashe Sejuani, generally you can play the board to where you're going to be locking down a very significant threat, right, on their side, so this will get you value. What's also nice is that if you have multiple of these, it's going to then lock down multiple things. So again, this deck, or this archetype in general, I should say, does fairly well against a more mid-range heavy meta. And then, of course, you have the backbone of Ionia, where you can either stun or deny, the other packages that Ionia does well, you don't feel as bad trying to play this mid-range game, because you kind of have the leg up, right? Because you have Will of Ionias as well to back it up. So up next, then we have Yone, which, again, 7-drop, 6/6. The stats are kind of there. It's just a good big body, but it does have this play stun 2 effect. So it's a little awkward with the Katarina turns, unless you already have a Katarina in play, because then you at least get the effect that she's going to bounce back to hand. Maybe you set up for the next turn, but generally you want to be able to stun and play Katarina in the same turn. So it's kind of awkward in that case, right? But obviously Katarina would just be insanely broken at 3, and then likewise I think this being at 6 would just be a little too good. So that's kind of the balancing aspect between the two of them. But again, generally speaking, this is where you would have the payoff with a Yasuo in play, where this then turns into have a big 6/6 body, kill 2 of your opponent's cards, and go about your way, right? And if not just straight kill them, you're blocking their things that want to be blocking, so you can just swing through for damage anyways, or give them really bad value blocks. So all that aside, that's kind of like the overall archetype review and what it wants to be doing. And then there's some other cards, right, in Ionia that just, you know, worked well. Now we have Concussive Palm. Now we have Will of Ionia. And what I like to say is I think these are just good generic cards. Everyone's going to agree with that, that Ionia got, period. But where does this go going forward? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot the other big payoff. And this is actually going to tie into Katarina. So the other, like, big payoff but easy to remove card that you have is Fey Blade Twirler. So this is something that you want to play early. It gets +2 every time you stun or recall a unit. So naturally, this is something that's going to get bigger and bigger. What's worth noting here is that with Katarina, every time, so you do Katarina first, then Blade Twirler, every time Katarina is bouncing to your hand, this is still getting a buff. So this is where we kind of break apart the archetype and say, okay, what parts do I really like with this, and what parts are just whatever, right? So obviously the difficult thing here is that it has just 3 HP, which we know is the last threshold you want to pass, right? If this had 4 HP, it would just be insane. But gotcha, get excited, right? Even a Thermo Beam early game can be really strong against this. There is quite a fair bit of removal against this, but if you think about we're in Ionia, right, we can use Denies, we can use Twin Discipline, which I'd probably recommend in a future build, and this is just really good for that. So yes, this is one of those cards that typically would be in the Yasuo deck. It doesn't really see play anywhere else, but I think that we can still make a really good Katarina deck that is also going to have Fey Blade Twirler in it, because this card, just as you're naturally playing the game, right, it's very, very, very easy to get this to like a 5/3 quick attack, and then it's really good. Your opponent is going to be forced to just chump block turn after turn, and then if we combo that with Katarina's rally effect, it's going to be really strong. So that was a lot of talk about Katarina. So let's actually talk about this card. Let's break it down and why I really like it and think that this is just a completely undervalued card right now. So Katarina is very difficult to play early on. I will admit that. So it is a 3-drop 3/2 that when it strikes, and thankfully it has quick attack, so it'll always get through in combat, it's going to bounce back to your hand and level up. Interesting to note here is that it does have an increased cost. Again, very, very strong balancing effect, but generally, once you get to this point, if it's in combat, because of the way the quick attack interaction works, they'll never be able to kill it in combat. Similar to Lee Sin, which is what I'm going to talk about next. So this is just always good to attack and get chip damage in, and then it's going to recall to your hand to give you more rally effects. So we know, based on, and again, if you watch the opening clip or just in general, rally effects are very, very strong against control decks right now, and I think that's kind of the key piece of, okay, we know that Katarina is just a straight up busted effect. How can we make this better? What other tools should we access to really increase the value of this card? Now, one thing worth mentioning is that in a recent, or I guess 2 balance patches ago now at the time of recording this, or maybe it was 3, one of the things that they changed is that they gave you a Fleeting Blade Edge in hand, which is a 1 cost, deal 1 anything. So what I really like about this, if we think about cards that we want to interact with, this is going to do 2 things for us. One, it is going to be a spell for Lee Sin, which again, we'll continue to talk about that a little bit. And then also, what I found is it goes very well with Ravenous Flock. Now, yes, this is kind of awkward. The argument that you would make here is, oh, but then you're 2 for 1ing yourself, or 1 and 1/2ing yourself, I guess, because you're burning a spell for it. However, Ravenous Flock, because we have so many stun effects or just ways to get in chip damage, this card has really overperformed for me, and I think is a just staple for what we should be considering good combo cards, or good synergy cards, I should say, going forward, right? So in the Braum Swain deck right now, everyone's running Sentry and Flock, right? So you stun something, you deal 4 to it, and that's kind of like your removal in that type of deck. So I think that's a pretty good combo going forward, and I think this is starting to, you know, shape the package where, for example, in this list, at least at the time of recording, Crimson Disciple is still in here. I'm expecting this to get hit by the nerf, which means Transfusion is a lot less relevant. Obviously, it's still good for getting that little chip damage if you want on your Blade Twirlers or your Katarina if you need that trade up. But at that point, I would just say run Might, which is where this list is going to be shifting. And then kind of the other weird card you'll notice in here is Conspirator. This was just a flex spot I was trying out. I really like the idea of being able to bounce our own sentries for multiple stuns, or our Concussive Palm when it gives us the 3/2, bouncing that back to our hand as well, because the 3/2 is just, it's not interesting, unfortunately. It doesn't really do a lot. Obviously, in like the cool turns where you get to stun their whole board, you swing with this, it's 3 extra damage, you win, sure, but generally speaking, just getting extra Concussive Palms is really, has been pretty insane for me when trying out this list. So honestly, there's probably a good 5 to 6 cards that we're going to take out of this. And I think what we really need to be talking about more is Lee Sin. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of not excited by this because it's Lee Sin, it's a 6-drop, it does nothing, right? It's very awkward, but it shouldn't be that hard to level him up. We are going to have a more spell-heavy focused build, and obviously we could run things like the Return or Sonic Wave if we really need to. But what I like about this card, once it's on the board, it's very difficult to remove unless it's outside of combat. So you just get value. And then if we think about Katarina, right? So we get this on board, it just sits there, we're happy. And then suddenly we're now putting in a triple Dragon's Rage per turn with Katarina giving us extra attacks. Now, yes, the argument here is, oh, but it can be broken up so easily, yada yada. Well, if you're going to 12 mana, then in theory that means you could have Katarina, Deny, and again, at least in terms of removal that they're going to have, it's going to be like Vengeance or Ruination, right? It's going to be these big, heavy, clunky spells. And obviously, if you're going against another Ionia deck, let's say Karma Ezreal, it's going to be just a different, you have to prioritize your deck differently and say, okay, I need to have just Katarina because the rally effects are going to be very strong at chumping away their board, right? So that comes down to a more skill part of it. But with Lee Sin, we can just decimate their board, right? So every attack, you're now removing cards from their side of the board and dealing damage to them. So again, the Dragon's Rage or the skill itself, you don't know it, he challenges something, you kick it, it feels great. Now again, yes, the disclaimer is you do need to cast at least 1 spell early on, but this is where things like Ravenous Flock or other cheap spells can come in handy. So there are turns where maybe it's not triple Katarina, right? Maybe it's just or triple attack and double Katarina. Maybe it's just 1 more, but still you're able to set up these board scenarios where you have so many other threats, and now Lee Sin is kicking their stuff either in killing it or back to their hand, where you're just going to create in 1 turn this massive tempo swing where they have nothing left. Now, again, Karma Ezreal decks, yeah, go figure, can still combo off and come back from that, but against any other mid-range style of deck, you can't come back from that. It's you have so many cards that cost 4 or 5 or 6 that you want to just have on the battlefield and stick around, that Lee Sin is going to actively punish those types of decks. And again, remember, because you played a spell, he has Challenger and using Dragon Rage, he is taking 0 damage. He is not getting harmed at all in combat. So, you know, he's invincible, again, loosely speaking here, for that regard. And the same thing with Katarina. She has quick attack, and she goes back to your hand before taking damage. So I think these two champions are really a better pairing and something that is just horribly overlooked. And I feel bad because I don't have as much time as I'd like to obviously work on these types of lists, but this is where I'm going to take it next on Monday, right? So you might be wondering what other spells are we going to be playing. Obviously, Might being the big one. It just works flawlessly with Lee Sin in general, and can be good in some narrow situations with Katarina. But again, keeping in mind, if you're playing Katarina, you don't want to buff her because she's going to bounce back to your hand and keep losing it, right? What you want Might to go on is something that's going to have quick attack like the Blade Twirler or Lee Sin, where now you're getting extra value with more and more attacks, right? And then the other card I mentioned, just in case people aren't aware of it, is going to be Twin Disciplines. This card just helps protect your different combo pieces, right? Blade Twirler, Katarina, Lee Sin if you really need it. But I think there's just a lot of good things that we can be doing with this, where it's going to be a really weird kind of like mid-rangey combo set of list, but on Monday, I'm really looking forward to this, and I think it's going to be very strong. So it's a little unfortunate that Yasuo isn't necessarily as impressive as I would have liked, or, you know, the payoff just isn't there, but instead we can build a Katarina Lee Sin deck and just focus more on just generic good stuff, right? Not worry as much about getting in those stun and recall effects, which again, we're still going to be running some number of, because things like Will of Ionia, right, and Concussive Palm are still just generically good cards. But I think that's where we really need to lead the discussion and go from, okay, we have this archetype, it's not really that good, here's the pain points from it, which hopefully I've described at enough detail at this point. How do we make this better, and what does that look like going forward? And quite honestly, I think Lee Sin is definitely going to be the way to go for it, right? And then there's some tech choices like Spirit's Refuge. If you're seeing a lot of burn, obviously just increase the number of these that you play. Getting in like that 5, 6, or however much healing you can get pretty early on is going to feel pretty good. And then things like Concussive Palm, just taking them off a turn from striking with Basilisk is going to be good enough to hopefully get you back up in the match. And if you hit your, quick attacks and overwhelms, you'll close the game out very quickly, or just have Spirit's Refuge on defense as needed. And then you have Deny for the Harrowing and stuff, right? So this is it's weird because it plays a slower game like a mid-range deck, but it has a lot of control-y pieces. But ultimately, it is really just a combo deck at the end of the day, because you want to set up multiple turns with Katarina. And in the games you're about to see, I absolutely get to pull that off. And it feels insane and great when it actually works. So honestly, TLDR, I think Katarina, and from a how is she now versus where's the meta shifting, I think this is critically underplayed, because rally effects are just so strong. So I don't know that Lee Sin is going to be like the end-all, be-all variant of it, but I think that this has more people need to be talking about this combo. And just, again, Rally punishes directly Karma decks, Ezreal, or Karma decks, Heimerdinger decks, and the Braum and Anivia decks, which are starting to see a little bit less play, but I imagine someone is still playing them in general in ladder. So with that, hopefully I did a good job of covering both the archetype and where I see this going forward. And from there, you can just watch some games if you want. Again, this is obviously not the perfect style or not perfect playing, but there are some really interesting scenarios that came up because it takes me a little bit longer to learn a deck. But on Monday, I will be streaming this, and I will be streaming the Lee Sin variant, because I think it's just going to be so much better. So, of course, if you like this video and you want to see more Legends of Runeterra content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps me out a ton. But otherwise, hope to see you around on Twitch sometimes, where I spend most of my time going over deck lists like this. And, I got to Masters, so now it's just time to brew and have fun while we have about 4 weeks left before the next set drops. So with that, enjoy the games, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. All right, so Ezreal Draven. This is like an old list, actually. So we definitely want some more early stuff. Ravenous Flock is generally okay. The Transfusion might be a little bit greedy, though. They're going to have some, 2-power stuff we want to try to... There we go. So we got our combo of that, at least. Hopefully this pulls up for us. And, in a perfect world, we're going to get to a point where this will hopefully stop being an auto-include for so many decks that run Noxus. Obviously, if you have Swain instead of Katarina, which I know a lot of people will swap out, this is, not that bad, in all honesty. Also, don't forget, with Katarina, we can actually play the Dagger and Ravenous Flock to deal something 5. So that's another mini combo that this deck has. So our opponent might be thinking of a Get Excited or something here, just to get our Crimson off the board before we get value off of it, which would be understandable. Or a Thermo Beam if they're playing that variation. Nope. So there's the get excited as expected. Concussive Palm getting out of our opponent's hand. Which probably isn't all that important for us, but... The Katarina here feeling pretty awkward, if I'm being honest, because we want to have one more spell mana. So I actually don't mind passing here if our opponent doesn't have anything to really develop, just so we can bank the spell mana and make the rest of our hand a little bit better. Yep, so this is a good example where we're going to be able to put down our sentry and just kill this. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we really... I think we do it this way. I wish we could develop two things, but we don't have that option. We're just going to go ahead and get this off the board. We already have the spell mana to bank this back. So it's not the worst thing in the world, right? And now this next turn, we can actually use Katarina Dagger plus Flock, which is pretty okay, in my opinion. The hardest thing about playing this list is when the hell you can actually bounce this. Yep. We could use the Deny here. Feels a little greedy. I think I'm going to use it anyways. That gets rid of our Flock play, but if they try to chump block this anyways, we might be okay, right? And this also lets us get in a bit more damage this way. So I don't hate it. Maybe a little bit more aggressive than I need to be in this matchup, but the fact that our opponent hasn't developed anything else yet kind of worries me. Like, they should have more of a board right here. We can just stun that on the next turn. I feel like really bad having to flock that. Where we can just like throw away the Concussive Palm. Let's go face with it. And, like, as much as I hate to say it, it's one of those situations where you're trying to build this deck because you want Yasuo to be good, but it's like, you can make this list so much better if you just take out Yasuo. And just put in, like, any other champ. Obviously, I'll have to change up, like, some of the stun packages and whatnot, or just, like, put in Swain, call it a day. Maybe we make, like, a Swain control list. Kind of a greedy spot to put Ezreal down, unless you're like just trying to shoot this. I think we take this anyways. Again, it's helping this Legion General. This is going to be a 7-7, which is just going to be absolutely massive for us. And we do have some recall. Like, we could like bounce this our own guy here in a pinch if we really had to. It's probably just not as likely. I think we still go for that anyways. And right, our opponent only has 4 cards in hand, so I think we go ahead and just try to pressure them out here. And then hopefully open attack into Katarina, or the General's going to come down. Okay, well, now the General's going to come down instead because it has Fearsome. They could burn all of their mana here to kill it, but... I think that's, like, not terrible. I feel pretty confident, like a 7-7, it's just good enough. Yep, that's fair. We really want to try to save this Intimidating Roar until we get a Yasuo. That's going to be, like, the key factor for us. Yep, Mystic Shot, that's fine. Like, we're still at 20 against the aggro deck, and they have 2 cards left. And we have Yone and Katarina. Like, this feels pretty free at this point. They really need a better, a really strong top deck here. All right, well, Getting an extra one of those feels pretty bad. And honestly, I think we're just fine to take the block. Oh, crap. They saw this one. I played the wrong one. Again, now, keeping in mind, this has Fearsome, so they potentially can't... You have 2 cards left? I mean, we have the other one in our hand, right? So it's kind of like, haha, joke's on you, and it costs 4 anyways. So it's just like if we protect this one or not, which if we do, I think we'd rather just play this out now. It's got to be another effect. And then they're down to 1 card, and we still have another Katarina in our hand. I think it's fine. Yep. And they had to burn a card for it. Sure. Now, please take 7. I guess they could Spinning Axe. They kind of like they have to Spinning Axe here, and then they lose the mushroom. Yep. So 1 card left, and we're coming up into a Katarina cycle turn, right? So we definitely want to take the open attack here. Ooh, they had a Guillotine as the last card. Okay, fair enough. So is this a... Right, is this a damage card is the question. No, it's not. Well, there you go. So now this is just free. And this is 2 free attacks for us. No! Shoot. All right, all right. Well, thankfully for us, we still have Big Stun Boy. Oh, there we go. That is a perfect card for us to hit. Oh, this is gonna be a delicious turn for us. And now again, keep in mind that this is just free to hit here, so now we don't get multiple bounces here, but we still get a very, very strong attack here. And then on the next turn, when it's their attack, we can just replay the Katarina. So this is like a really good showcase where the Katarina can definitely shine for us. Because now, again, this is going to recall, right? So you attack with Katarina first, then you play the Blade Twirler. Or attack with a second so it still gets a buff. Yep. That's fine. We could buff it, right? That it's not lethal, though. 9, 10, 11. No. And now if they try to play a smaller unit, we have the stun. Yep. Now we have stun into Katarina, and that's just going to be massive power boost. Oh, the Ezreal. That's fine, right? He has literally no cards that are relevant. And this gives us 2 attacks at best. Yeah. Literally, it does not matter. Both are, in fact, lethal.
No sweat.
Deny, I think we just have to keep. Katarina can be, like, decent because it's, like, a continuous pressure against them. They can give us rally at any time. Kind of like all of this, if I'm being honest, because transfusion can be a big deal, too. We play 3, though. I don't think we're looking for a transfusion here. Yep.
Where are you?
These old eyes still see far and clear.
Ooh, that's rough. So the turn where the transfusion would actually be really good. They can't Avalanche, I guess. Well, Avalanche isn't even that good for them. I think we actually do have to play the Blade Twirler and try to line up the Katarina for the next turn. The problem is, like, they're going into a Braum turn. Which means I guess we would want to use Concussive Palm then. What is proper sequencing here? This is kind of awkward. They probably block here, I guess. Okay, yeah, that's fine too. Okay. I think we do bank the spell mana. And like this Intimidating Roar might low-key be insane. Problem is we can't do like Intimidating Roar plus Deny in case they have like a Grasp or something. That's gonna be awkward.
In Avarosa's name.
We actually do want to take this. If they have like a Fury or something that's like not even that bad. Don't mind them getting the card. We want to drop the Katarina, kill this, and then hopefully open swing for a bigger amount of damage. Or we might just have to pop their Braum using the dagger plus flock play. Okay, so we now got them to waste their entire turn. The problem is getting the 3/2 doesn't do a lot for us. I feel like I am supposed to save this here. Like, this is a good source of damage. And they can't play Braum this turn now. I feel like getting them to waste a Fury there is good enough.
I dare you.
And we're a mana short from the Katarina plus Roar, which is unfortunate. And, like, if they have a Braum here, they have to play it. Being 1 mana off feels so bad. Please play the Braum. Shoot. This Legion General is about to be big then. Well, now the good news is we have enough mana to do it. They could also be setting up a Ruination. So I think it's like hold, deny, Blade's Edge this. Blade's Edge one of them, right? We need them to waste a Ruination here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this will be 9 cards in hand. I think I have to put them on the Ruination here. Because the follow-up pressure from us is insane. Remembering, this is going to go back to our hand, too. Ooh, that's not what I expected. But I will stop that all the same. Because then they just have the 1 blocker, and I think that's okay, too. Oh, I was probably supposed to put this on the stack. That was probably misplay.
This might hurt.
They probably just bank the spell mana, and or they have a grasp here for this. We can't beat that. I mean, that's how it is, right? I think we had to save the damage on this so that it doesn't get like, yeah, exactly that. So it wasn't Avalanche plus Vile Feast here. It would have been really bad for us. So, yeah, this is definitely going to be our open attack. Hope for the best. And they still have Ruination mana, right? So we have to respect and just go big attackies here. And then kind of hope this Katarina flips. Don't really need the life gain. Nothing else really here matters. I don't think we waste the Death Lotus, right? We don't want to put ourselves at, what's the word for it? We don't want to put ourselves in a position where a Vile Feast picks this up. And then obviously the good thing here now is that we have a Katarina to force out rallies. The question now becomes, how do we get our opponent to waste some resources so that we can get around that most likely rally that they're holding on to, right? Right, so we always want to put this on their turn, and they have a full hand, right? So they have to develop something here, which is going to put them under Ruination mana. Yep, so now we can do a stun. And then we still have enough for a Katarina. Obviously, a Sentry here would have been a lot better. But now at best, our opponent has one Grasp, which is obviously going to hit this. Maybe they hit our Katarina. But we're still getting in some damage where we need to. If they play a Grasp, though, we have to protect it. Nope. That makes things a bit awkward. It's not a Withering Wail. It has to be like another Vile Feast then. I mean, we have to play the Katarina no matter what. It's just kind of unfortunate timing. But again, keep in mind they can block here, so this is at least getting us in some damage. Yep. So they did have the double. This is kind of the unfortunate spot to be in. And then obviously we don't want to do anything with this yet. Actually, I guess that is free damage. They probably pick this up. They don't block here. That's still 6 this way, and it gets rid of one of their blockers. And this goes back to our hand. I think this is definitely a spot where we could use it, but I think we gotta hold the other Katarina just because it gets around Grasp for us. Right, and then this is where it becomes a little awkward in case they have like Ruination or something. But I think like this becoming a 5/5 is still good enough, right? And then we have Katarina as another attack out to it. Or I'm sorry, it's an 8/8. Why did I say a 5/5? The thing's big, right? Like it's got to be. It's definitely, hey, you probably want to vengeance this or get rid of it in some meaningful way. They definitely can't kill with damage in this list. It's got to be a Ruination or a Vengeance. And they know we have the Katarina, so we're getting into attacks. Kind of no matter what here. Minotaur Reckoner being able to keep this like perma-stun feels pretty good, I gotta say. Kind of a weird... I mean, they're just holding it. Sure.
I protect this place.
You just take 2 damage for no reason. All right.
Is that all?
Just because they want to kill out on the next turn. The downside here, right, is that the Anivia is gonna level up. There's not much I can do about it. They still have to get past the Legion General, though, but it's like open attack. I don't know. We'll see.
This is our time.
Really wish we had our other deny. Okay, it's pretty good. And, you know, Reckoner is still going to be a 6/6 here, just locking down the Anivia. Obviously, this is just a free block because it's going to die. This is going to have damage on it. Sure, whatever. And now we have Reckoner into Katarina for an attack. I guess we could just do Katarina, right? Oh, no, because they could still block with the egg. Oh, this is rough. Plus, they have The Anivia can still block Fearsome, right? So I don't want to give them the Blade Twirler. I think it's still like, try to force out a Ruination, right? This is pretty aggro for our opponent. And then we can do like Katarina plus another play. No? Okay.
I will endure.
Oh, you just have another Anivia. Huh. Man, life's hard. Well, they can't Ruination now, right? So I think we just try to save this for an open attack. Oh, they could have a Vile Feast. I think we still have to. I gotta save this other one in our hand as long as we can. Oh, we can't Reckoner then, right? Shoot. I was 1 mana off. I wasn't thinking about that.
Don't let the fluffy tails fool ya.
Leave your bags in the door.
Ugh. Both these can block, right? That's kind of an issue for us. I mean, that's a little bit better. That definitely puts us more in Ruination range, though. They probably have some number of rekindlers as well, which makes this awkward. They probably don't have that good of a follow-up to the second Katarina. I can't imagine that they do. But that only gives us 3 to work with. Wasting the stun here feels pretty scary.
Close the distance. I've carved meat bigger than you.
Do they have another effect for this, for crying out loud? Unless it's just Vengeance, right? Then they kill both. If they Vengeance... Oh, they could still have enough to shoot. Yeah, they still have enough for a Grasp. And right, killing the Anivia egg doesn't do a lot for us either way. Miscall. Oh, that's rude. Alright, so that didn't matter. I think we just might be dead here.
Underestimate.
Like, sure, they have 4 cards left, but it's
No going.
still not looking the greatest. Like, this attack is fine, but they still get what they want out of it, and we can't protect our Legion General, which is like the biggest issue here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, it's like that's just not enough pressure. But I don't think there's a world where we can, like, this doesn't live otherwise, right? Like, it just dies to Grasp.
With me. Let's
So
talk
sure.
about your tag.
It did what it needed to do. And then we're losing a lot of our board to the double Anivia. Need another way to stun this. Like a roar off the top would be good or something. Oh, that's... Hey, buddy. Better late than never.
Bring the storm.
Want to see these moves up close?
So close. So close. Stun could be good, but I mean, like, a Braum here just screws us up, too. They've used one Vengeance, but again, we can't ever beat the, Ruination. Good heavens, you have another? Oh, I guess, Yone off the top would be sweet, right? Well, that's kind of, it's kind of silly. So then we get 2 attacks with, Katarina. Sequencing. He gets the eggs. We can't beat the eggs. So, technically, we want to attack first.
One blade, one purpose.
I protect this place.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Isn't that the third? Oh, it's just a second. Oh, but still. So, next turn we have the 2 of these, I guess. Assuming we're not just dead.
You should stay back, cowards.
I guess this freezing one of them actually does quite a bit of work for us, right? And they know that we have the other Katarina. Oh, that's pretty bloody good, isn't it? Do we seriously just win? Yes! Let's go! Katarina! The rally effect being so strong.